All right. Well, hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another Franchising Done Right podcast with me, your host, Ralph Kinder. Look, I'm really excited about this brand today. It is one of the hottest rated or highest rated brands with something that's called Franchise Business Review. And I'm just super stoked. I've got two good friends of mine that I've known for a long time, Josh Titler and Ken Osness, that are on board to talk about this brand. I think you guys will be excited. You're going to learn some really cool stuff. Just quick reminder on me, my background spanned, decades in operations and franchise development, a lot of that in hospitality. I've worked, all across the country, and today I use that knowledge to help people really sort of navigate this whole franchise, process and franchise industry to decide if franchising's right for them. There's never any pressure. I like to call it, the insight you need without the hype. And so I help people make it a business decision based on facts. And so that's franchising done right. So now I'm pleased to welcome Josh Titler and Ken Osness to the podcast. Josh, Ken, welcome.
Thanks for having us, Ralph. It's a good
Yeah,
day.
appreciate it. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm excited. So, I want to talk to you guys and really honestly, you know, for the audience, I want to brag on, Fibrenew, which is the brand that we're talking about today. And I want to brag on it for really this reason. There's a lot of fluff that's out there with franchising, right? Everyone claims to be the hottest this or the best this or the newest widget or whatever. Um, and sometimes it's sort of difficult to wade through that, if you're someone that's looking at franchising, maybe even for the first time, because everything that's on the internet is true, I'm sure. But one thing that I like to really, you know, educate people on and really work with brands that have third party validation. And what I mean by that is people outside of that brand that validate that particular brand performs well. And one of the most reliable and longest firms out there that do third party valuation of franchising is a group called Franchise Business Review. If you haven't heard of them, great organization led by Eric Stites. I've not met Eric, but I've known of Eric for a long, long time. And what they do, Franchise Business Review, they actually go out there. There's 4,000 plus 4,000 plus franchise concepts, not restaurant concepts, but 4,000 plus franchise concepts that are out there. And it's really hard to figure out which one's right for you. But what they do is they actually go to the people that are operating these franchises, and they go out there to thousands of franchise concepts that have at least 10 or more franchisees that are open and operating their business. And then they have an anonymous 33 question survey that they provide all of these franchisees. And then they'll analyze all the responses. And then annually they'll come up with, and they'll benchmark the responses, across, the different respondents. And then they'll benchmark a franchisee satisfaction score against, well over 1,000 brands, and then recognize the top 200. And so this is where I want to really brag on you guys, Ken and Josh. I'm just going to read some of this stuff, and then, I want to, it's just madness what's going on. So Fibrenew, and, this is a brand that's been on the list at least since 2019. Currently scored a 90 out of 100 points in your franchise owner satisfaction report. Training and support, franchise systems, leadership, core values, franchise community, self-evaluation. And then there's different categories that FBR, Franchise Business Review, also makes awards for these different brands. And just in 2025, you guys were named top franchises for culture, top franchises for franchisee satisfaction, top franchises for women, franchise rock star. And since 2019, you guys have received 35 different FBR awards, anything from what I mentioned to top low cost franchises, top service, top franchises for veterans, most innovative, top home base. What in the hell are you guys doing over there?
Well, it's a great culture, Ralph, and it starts at the top. It starts with a guy named Jesse Johnstone, the president, and culture trickles down, right? And Jesse's built a great team. One of my favorite things about Fibrenew, and I think this is just something that resonates with people. I used to be a business coach in franchising, I never owned a franchise, but I did the work for the franchise that I worked for, and I did the sales. So I knew how to do it and I knew how to grow it. So I had some street cred, but I'd never owned it. And that made me, a good business coach. But when you look at the Fibrenew franchise, every single business coach they have is either an existing Fibrenew owner or used to be a Fibrenew owner. One guy owned it for decades, sold it, and then instead of retiring, he just stayed on to continue to teach and train and support people, right?
Mhm.
So when you have people who don't just talk the talk, when they walk the walk, when you have a great culture at the top that permeates through the entire organization, when people do what they say they're going to do, and they just create this amazing, welcoming, successful family atmosphere, and that's the recipe, man, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ralph, I'd add that, I've been friends with the founder of Fibrenew for 20 years. And, I was joking with somebody the other day. I said, when your wife met you, she thought, everything, you're the greatest guy in the world. And then eventually she realizes that you have flaws like everybody else, right? And so as Josh and I came to be a part of this organization, the expectation was that, we were hearing all the accolades and all the great things about the brand. But the more we got to know them, what we were going to finally realize is they had warts like everybody else. And quite honestly, we've kind of found the opposite. We've been more impressed with who they are and what they've done. I mean, they finished, you mentioned the FBR report, they finished in the top 10 over the last several years. And this year we were number 7 overall. And one of the things that Josh and I are most impressed by when we came on board was one of the one of the questions that they have is, would you recommend or would you recommend this franchise to a family member or a close friend if they were looking to buy a business? And 96% of the franchise owners said yes, they would.
Good
And
grief.
that's
That's insane.
amazing. Yeah, it really is.
And Franchise Business Review says if you can get above 60% in that category, you're elite. We're at 96%. So you're right. There's a lot of good stuff going on there at Fibrenew.
Yeah, that's insane. And so for the audience, I want to put this into perspective. You know, a lot of times people think, oh, well, franchisors, they make all this money off of me and with these franchise fees and royalties, and they don't really care and all that stuff. Are there brands out there that are like that? Sure. There's always some knucklehead that's out there that's doing something kind of squirrely. But those aren't brands that grow, and they certainly aren't brands, that sustain a model, because as part of an investigation, when somebody's looking at a brand, what's one of the most important things that you do is talk to existing franchisees. So, Josh, Ken, what you guys are talking about, and with this 96%, recommend, all BS aside, that's the highest number I've ever heard. I've never known any brand to have a number that high. So it speaks to the organization, the culture, the structure, support, all of that stuff. So it's really cool. Well, you know, kind of moving on, nobody's really familiar with Fibrenew, or maybe they haven't seen, this brand, really out there in the marketplace, because people think of what they see on the street. They see, the restaurants or the gyms or the dog grooming, or, or what have
Mhm.
you, or the kids' education and stuff like that. But, this is a service-based business. And so sometimes people aren't even aware that it's out there. So give me a little bit of history on Fibrenew. You guys are really large. I mean, you've got a lot of stuff going on. You're not even just in the US, you're global.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, you're right, Ralph. First of all, what Fibrenew does is they repair, they restore leather, plastic, and vinyl. And on the surface, you may say, well, how much opportunity really is there? Think about where leather, plastic, and vinyl is, okay? Any place you go to get your hair cut, or you're going to sit in a barber chair or a salon chair, that's leather and vinyl. Any restaurant you go to that serves food or beverage, whether it's a restaurant, a bar, a brewery, a coffee shop, a cafe, whatever it is, if you can sit down in there, they've probably got booths or chairs that have leather or vinyl. Those things rip all the time. How many times have you been in a restaurant, Ralph, where you sit on a booth and it's torn or it's starting to tear? It's kind of uncomfortable, or worse yet, they take duct tape and they tape over it, right? Like, just a horrible look, a horrible image. that's the kind of stuff that we repair. You think about like every automobile pretty much has leather, plastic, and vinyl in it, whether it's the seats or whether it's the console. Ken, tell them about your steering wheel.
Oh yeah, I had the Fibrenew franchisee. I don't know if it'll show on your video here or whatever, but I'm going to attempt to do so. I have a 10-year-old automobile, and if I can pull this up, this is what my steering wheel looked like.
Oh yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. And you see it all worn. And so I bring this guy in, and it ends up looking like this shortly afterwards. And he came in, he pulled out an app on his phone. It's our color app, and it told him exactly what the colors were in the steering wheel. It was virtually every color we work with has four colors in it. So it was like 22% of this, 33% of this. He took some cleaner, got all the oil, all the dirts off the steering wheel, mixed up in his little spray gun, the exact match, spray that on there, and then put a top coat on. And what I always say to people about this business is it's a great business to be in because you get instant gratification. You get instant feedback from your customer who says, wow, I cannot believe that this looks like this when it looked like that before. And you also get instant feedback for yourself because you're pretty much getting paid that day for the work that you've done. And so, uh, whether it's a boat or, as Josh mentioned, restaurants, we do a lot of stuff within aviation, medical, with doctors' offices. You go in. My chiropractor recently said, "Yeah, I'm going to call your local Fibrenew guy because I need to have this table, which is thousands and thousands of dollars if you've been in a chiropractor's office, to be able to not just throw those things away or completely have to redo the upholstery." And so there's just so much out there, as Josh said, everywhere, for any of your listeners right now, just look around where you are. How far do you have to get before you can count to 10 for what you see in leather, plastic, or vinyl? And we make our own products, and we don't sell those anywhere else. They don't sell them in Home Depot or anything like that. The products are superior to anything else that we've seen out there, and we just have amazing, excellent training, and so it's quite remarkable.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'll
we
give you
put
some personal validation on really sort of the value of a Fibrenew. So old restaurant guy, I've run steakhouses, at the unit level, multi-unit level, and above. And when you've got a nice restaurant and you've got, Ken, to your point, booths that are torn or chairs, that are nicked up or tables that don't look good, you know, we would have we would pull those chairs out and we would have to figure out, have a spare chair somewhere. But we would have sort of a little section of these 3 or 4 chairs that, we couldn't put on the restaurant floor anymore because they looked like crap, to be honest with you. And we never really quite knew what to do with them. I could never really find, I'll call it a guy, but I could never find someone to come out and do repairs on that. So, it would stay in our back room for 3 or 4, weeks or however long it would be until finally we couldn't find anybody, and we would either order a new chair or what have you, but it just wasn't palatable to go out on the floor because that, as a restaurant, that's your main impression is what does the
Yep.
restaurant look like, and torn booths, torn chairs, screwed up countertops and things like that. That'll kill your business.
You can only play musical chairs for so long, and it's not really a hot evening event at the restaurant or bar either to play musical chairs. So
No, you need butts in seats, man, and if you don't have seats, you got a big problem for sure. So
yeah.
well, so you guys, I mean, kind of just looking at some notes here, I mean, you're in Canada, New Zealand, Mexico, you're in South America, you're in Saudi Arabia. So I mean, you guys have, a lot of breadth with this. And to me, it just kind of shows that, this product and service is needed. So how many franchisees do you guys actually have now?
well, it is literally everywhere, including all around the globe, not just the United States. I mean, it started in Canada, and this is some interesting math. So, Fibrenew came into the U.S. in '99. That's when the first U.S. franchise opened. And then it took 13 years and they got to 100 locations in the US. And that was probably very close to 100 franchise owners. Maybe a few people had multiple. 13 years later, 2025, here we are. We've more than tripled right? Over 307 locations. So the growth has happened. A lot of growth in the United States, but like you said earlier, it's Chile and Saudi Arabia and Mexico and New Zealand and Fibrenew's everywhere.
Yeah. And then, that's kind of the standard growth timeline too. It takes most brands 10, 15 years to get that 100 units. And even that, there's only maybe 5% of brands that ever get to that level. So, yeah, that's well earned to get there. I'm excited to see you guys growing, but you still have a ton of territory that's still available. I was looking at a map the other day because I was doing some research on the brand, and there's still lots of green open markets.
Yeah, we have major or locations available in virtually every major market in the country. We probably have another 150 locations in general that we can put in the U.S. And we have all sorts of different kinds of people that are in our system. We have folks who've, maybe they took a buyout or got laid off, or they have a pension somewhere and they're just looking, they like working with their hands. They want to be in the community. And so we have some folks that, just decide to go out and, almost as a hobby, if you will, to do the brand. I mean, they do real well, but they're not, it's not it's not the sustenance that they need in order to survive. And then we have some folks who've just really built some large empire businesses. I mean, we have some sole proprietors. Some are about half of them are sole proprietors. About half of them start out with a technician and they focus on sales, marketing, and management. And then they have their technician go out. And in some instances, they both go out and they can accomplish, the old proverb says two can accomplish more than twice as much as one person. And so they kind of double up that way and really maximize their efforts there. But and it's a wide variety. We have people that used to be pharmaceutical sales reps, and people that were corporate refugees, like so many people out there that are just looking for quality of life, being able to control their own schedule, their own time, and go on vacation when they want to go on vacation. And so it's been great to see the people that come into the system.
Oh, that's really cool. So it's an opportunity where I mean, you're really going to be involved full time in the business, whatever your definition of, meaning the franchisee's definition of full time. But this is not an executive model where you're going to hire, 20 different people to start the business up. I would guess so. Feels like maybe, and tell me if I'm wrong, that's something that somebody could scale to over time to where they're really into that executive model, but probably several years down the road.
Uh, I would say the majority of our folks are involved in the day-to-day in some way, shape, or form, either performing the work or doing the sales, marketing, and management. Doesn't mean that we don't have people who have had somebody in place and they're keeping their day job and they've hired somebody to kind of manage this. So they spend less time as far as the owner goes. But certainly, yeah, they could grow it to that executive model as you're describing. But for the most part, we want them to go through training, be able to understand it, be able to have street cred with their employees and their customers. But it's not, there's a misnomer out there that to get into this business, you have to be the person that's performing the work. And that's only about half of our group, as we've said.
Okay. And then, so with the training, I mean, it's got to be hands-on, clearly, right? Because of what you guys do. So what does that training look like? Is it a week? Is it a couple of weeks? Is it ongoing? What do you guys have for that?
Yeah, training is 2 weeks in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. You could do it via Zoom though. So you think back to 2020, and they had to come up with a way to train people, especially with the borders being shut down in Canada. And so what they do is they send you stuff. If you train via Zoom, even still today, they send you things to work on. You're participating with the class as it's happening in Calgary. You're just doing it from home, just like we're talking right now. So it still can be done. But I think the vast majority of people today go to the training. And like I said, it's 2 weeks. It's very hands-on. And you're right, Ralph, you can grow into a scaled model, right? You can grow into where you're working on it, not necessarily in it. And like Ken said, that's about half the franchise owners. But you think about the people, excuse me, you think about the people who come into Fibrenew. A sliver of the people had any sort of experience in repairing leather, plastic, and vinyl, right? That's one of the beauties of this business. This is something most people don't know how to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love this franchise. We perform a task that the vast majority of people on this planet don't know how to do. They need us, right? And so because most people don't have experience in this, and Ken just gave you a bunch of different types of backgrounds of people that come into this. It's the Fibrenew training program that makes these people these experts. Fibrenew's got almost 10,000 five-star reviews right now. They're approaching their 10,000th five-star Google review. And that doesn't happen without amazing products and amazing training. And so they really, really have that dialed in. It's been a long staple of Fibrenew for a long time.
Yeah. 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 It's, it's amazing. I just keep thinking of all the different applications for this and, but it's really honestly, it's a simple model. I mean, you guys have a really low investment, isn't it? Somewhere, I mean, it's south of $150,000, right? For all in investment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
most people are going to be, go ahead.
go ahead, Josh.
Most people are going to be 100 to 120. The FDD says you're 101 to 121, and that's with a little bit of working capital. There's not a lot of expenses in this business. There's very few expenses in this business, frankly. You mentioned it's a mobile business. It's not. It doesn't require brick and mortar. Um, it doesn't even require like a big. It doesn't require a big box truck. So most people use like a van or a truck or an SUV. A lot of times it's a van or a truck or an SUV they have sitting in their driveway. They just wrap it. And because of that, we can keep these expenses really low. We can keep the ongoing or the upfront costs really low as well. So ongoing costs are low, upfront expenses are low. Most people are going to be 1 to 120.
Yeah, that is a really, really low investment. So out of all of and you may not know the answer, but I'll ask it the question anyways. So out of all of your revenue, and it's hard to talk about the typical franchisee, but I'll ask the question. Do you have a sense of how much is commercial work where you're working with restaurants and dentists and doctors' offices and chiropractors and things of that nature versus the individual homeowner who's got a favorite couch or
Yeah,
chair?
what we know there, Ralph, is early on, most of our franchise owners, as they launch, are more heavily on the residential side. We do really strong in search engine optimization and driving website leads and those kinds of things to them. But over time, most of the franchise owners have flipped heavily toward the commercial side of the business. And so, you look at a territory of 300,000 population. Well, that's, let's say that's 130,000 homes, right? But it's probably anywhere from four to, I've heard as high of 15,000 businesses in a territory. And so you think about how many times the marina is going to call you to work on some boats or a car dealership that you develop a relationship with. I've heard stories of people who've gotten a residential home doing somebody's couch, talking to the owner who loves what they've done, and they say, "What is it you do for a living?" He says, "Oh, I own such and such car dealership down the street." And all of a sudden they've got themselves a commercial client. And then we work really hard on bringing warranty work and national accounts to our franchise owners. There's a lot of furniture companies, there's retail, big box stores, big restaurant chains that we do work for. And any of that work that we get in goes to whatever franchisee owns those particular zip codes.
Yeah, no, I love that. I keep, because my background's restaurants, I kind of keep just going back to that and thinking of that over and over and over again. That's really cool. So it sounds like corporate, you guys drive a lot of the leads to the franchisees. Is it all managed, like with social media and you're talking about SEO, is that all managed internally?
It
The
is.
easiest way to think of,
Go ahead, Josh. Sorry.
sorry, the easiest way to think about it, Ralph, is Fibrenew corporate office does like the B2C stuff, and the national account work and the national warranty work, things like that. So like Ken said, it's the search engine optimization. They run the Google AdWords for the franchise owners. All the franchise owners put in $200 a month. Fibrenew runs that for you. Fibrenew does the social media advertising for you. That drives the B2C stuff, the residential stuff. And they build those national accounts and that warranty work. Locally, there's doors that only the franchise owners can open them. Visiting all these auto dealers and medical facilities and barbershops and the places that we've talked about. So uh, as far as like the B2B stuff goes, like that's really on the franchise owner. Uh, yeah, if you're looking for a mix, anecdotally, it might be 2 to 1 B2B versus B2C, maybe 3 to 1 for some people. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, though. Everybody's going to focus on different things in their market.
Yeah, no, I love that. You know, I've done a lot of work, with small business owners, during my career and, in my own business. And, I've always found a lot of value to, chambers of commerce and BNI institutions, stuff like that. But, I always remind people that's not just where you show up one time and all of a sudden you're overloaded with business. Those are truly relationship building kinds of things where,
Mhm.
once you show that you're a part of the community and you're part of the community for a long time, that's when you start getting those relationships with the car dealers, with the doctors and the med spas and things of that nature, because they know you're part of the community and that, you're there to help support them in their businesses as well. So, so that's cool. So how about an item 19? And for the audience, that's basically your financial performance representation. So, look, 96%, recommend rate, a very, very low investment, a really mobile business where you're not stuck to a brick and mortar thing. What does your item 19 show and what's possible for your franchise owners?
Ken, go ahead.
Okay. Uh, Fibrenew compared to a lot of franchises out there, a lot of franchises are driven by a percentage royalty, maybe 6%, maybe 10 or higher percentage points. And so for every dollar that they perform, the company takes that amount for the efforts that they do in driving business toward them and training and all those kinds of things. Fibrenew is a unique brand in that we do not have a flat, or we don't have a royalty, we have a flat rate monthly fee. And the first 6 months that people are in business, regardless of how much work that they perform, they don't pay a dime of any fee back to the company. So it's $0 for 6 months. From month 7 until the end of year 2, they pay $795 a month. And that could be they go out on September 1st and do a job and they've paid their $795 and everything else that they do the rest of that month, it goes in their pocket. Every year after that, after year 2, starting in year 3, that 795 increases by 5%. And so we don't have an item 19 because the way the rules work, we don't collect the revenue of our franchise owners. But for anybody that's looking into this business, they're certainly going to be able to find out from the franchise owners that they speak to, the kind of revenue that they perform and the kind of profit margins that they have. Uh, basically the profit margins are pretty ridiculous compared to a lot of other ridiculously good compared to a lot of other brands out there because as we've spoken about already, we don't have a whole lot of overhead. Josh mentioned vehicles earlier. We have a franchise owner in the middle of Manhattan in New York City whose vehicle for his business is a bicycle that pulls a little cart behind it. And he drives through the
Smart
streets of New
man.
York.
Smart man.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so there isn't an item 19, but I guarantee you they're going to be able to find out the revenues and the earnings fairly quick, like as they look into this business.
Well, look, I'll make it simple for me. You can't get to a 96% recommendation by existing franchisees unless they're making money. If they're not making money, yeah, I don't know what your approval rate would be, but it would stink. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
It's a good
But
point.
then, yeah, so that's cool. So a flat rate royalty that at the max could be $1,200 a month. So call that $14,000 a year. I'm rounding the numbers out, or $15,000 a year. So if I had a business that was doing 750,000 in revenue, that's a real royalty rate of about 2%. Um, those numbers work. I mean, that's really, really low. It's like anything else, as a franchisee, you've got to go out there and it's work. It's not just like you magically open the doors and all of a sudden you have all this money, coming at you. But, um, man, that's powerful for you to really be able to create your own revenue stream, and then more of it stays in your pocket as you continue to grow the business. That's pretty cool. That's pretty rare in the industry. I don't know the percentages, but most brands are doing what you're talking about, Ken, where it's a percentage of your overall revenue. So that's really cool. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. Um, you guys also do some other stuff outside of just repairing things, right? Repairing, furniture and stuff like that. you're pretty embedded into, some different philanthropic things. So tell me about that a little bit. I think that you guys do some things, with Habitat for Humanity and things of that nature.
Ken, you want to tackle that?
Uh, yeah, sorry. I was looking down for a second. Yeah, a number of things that we do is we've spent a lot of time building partnerships with the Red Cross, Salvation Army, Habitat for Humanity. There's franchise owners that are really into that whole thing, and they'll take items that have been donated or given to them that are maybe in not 100% perfect shape, and they'll restore those and then return those to the store, and they're able to make money and to drive the the uh, the building of the home, drive that fee down, and all those kinds of things. So there's a number of things that our franchise owners get involved in that way, and there's certainly there's things we do that nobody else can do out there, right? And so we try to leverage what our gifts are, what our talents are, to be able to help the community at large, and people smile too when they see those products.
Yeah, and franchise owners have the ability, again, local doors that only franchise owners can open, right? They're going to know the needs and they're going to find the needs and maybe it may not be a big organization like, like Habitat for Humanity and the Restore, right? Or like Red Cross, but they can bless people and help a lot of people locally. That's not hard for the people to find either. So for people who like lifestyle businesses, right, where they get to see the immediate gratification of their work and really truly do something that most people can't do and that robots can't do, and we get to help people at the same time. And we were on a call recently with some franchise owners, and the franchise owner said, "People call me a magician. They're like, I can't believe you did that. You must be a magician." It's a very wow effect what we do. People can't believe that we do what we do and at the speed that we do it. It's a cool business like that.
Yeah, it's cool. So, well, listen, look, this has been great. I love learning about the Fibrenew brand. I think you guys have it is as hard as it is to believe that the concept has been around for 40 years, could still be a secret. It's kind of mind blowing, but what a great brand. I can think of it from a personal perspective. I always have people asking me, Ralph, I want a business that's recession resistant. I want a business that's Amazon proof. Um, I want a business where, in this case, help the environment because you've got less things going into, the landfills and things of that nature, in a brand where franchisees are happy. And again, I'll hit it again at a 96% recommend rate. Um, there aren't a lot of fiber news that are out there. And so just a great brand. I just, I commend you guys for doing what you're doing and the leadership of the brand. Um, don't change a thing. I think that you're going to find some great candidates, over these next several years. I hope you're able to award the rest of the country and, and continue to grow with it. But that's Fibrenew, man. It's just great. So, I appreciate you guys coming on, Josh, Ken. Anything else that you want to add that we haven't covered?
I would just say one last thing, and that is, sometimes people look at businesses like this, and if they've come out of a corporate space, some sophistication to them, this kind of business sometimes doesn't look like it's all that sophisticated. But when you peel back the layers of it and you see the leadership, Jesse, the brand president, came out of the software space. There's a couple of early investors who are still involved in the business that are basically some pretty big names in the tech world in Silicon Valley, and some major companies that I could talk about, but they're the kind of people who are saying, hey, here's the latest way to be able to drive business. Here's the latest way to market the business. Here's some great new things going on with SEO. So there's a lot of sophistication in the background of this business that once people get into it, they'll realize these are the kind of people that I want to be involved in. Kind of folksy, homey feel, but at the same time, people have no idea the power that's behind us.
Yeah, I love that. So there you go, audience. That's it. Fibrenew. under $120,000 investment. 96% recommends from their existing franchisees. Number 7 on the Franchise Business Review out of thousands of different concepts that are out there. 35 different awards from Franchise Business Review since 2019. Good Lord, what's not to like? That's it. Fibrenew, Ken, Josh, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you guys. For those watching, please press the like and subscribe button. I'll continue to share insights on what you need to know about franchising, other great brands like Fibrenew, and then I'll have a link on the bottom where you guys, if you've got the Kindle app, you can download my Franchising Done Right, a step-by-step guide to choosing the perfect franchise for free. I'm Ralph Kinder, and this is Franchising Done Right.